Just a week after the World Rally Championship round, we turn back the clocks for a remake of the most famous and most capricious of all road races. For its 22nd edition, the Monte Carlo Historic Rally follows the footsteps of a past that has nothing old-fashioned about it. A melancholic strand probably, but fundamentally rooted in the reality of time. It's in fact a real challenge against time, but this time it takes place with the rules of the traffic code on open roads, and in the respect of the average times chosen by the competitors. Initially vintage vehicles, all of which were selected by the organizers, the Automobile Club of Monaco, among the models running in the original events in their time. The course takes after the great classics of Monte Carlo in the Drôme and the Ardèche and the French Riviera hinterland for the running of the regularity specials. But as with its origins, the challenge begins throughout Europe, starting from a concentration stage that will converge this year again towards the south of France. Among the novelties this year, a departure from Athens, putting 1,497 kilometers on the clock. The Greek capital had not hosted the Monte Carlo since 1975. However, the Acropolis was among the first starting points of the Monte Carlo Rally in 1927. It's thus a true return to the roots, marked by a commitment in the number of Greek crews, with one team of 10 cars. A strong representation that will be complemented by 15 other cars, including a team of chefs. With 2,149 kilometers to run, Glasgow is the most distant departure point. Even if it has only 6 cars on the podium, the Scottish ports gathered a great audience together. Several hundred spectators watched the competitors who joined the contingent for Reims after crossing the channel by ferry. The great adventure can begin. Its deep and historical ties with the Principality have made it a starting city of the Monte Carlo Rally. Close to Frankfurt in Germany, the city of Bad Homburg has been made famous by its thermal baths and casino. About 30 cars are under the starters' orders for a journey of 1,165 kilometers. The snow's already present in places in this region, and the competitors know it's only just a glimpse of the range of conditions they'll have to confront over the next days. But for them, it's not a problem. A winter rally without climatic rigors would probably not have the same flavor in their eyes. First exhibited in the cloister of the Palazzo del Senato, the 65 cars that set out from the city of Milan in Italy are given a particularly warm and prestigious reception by the organizers of this transalpine departure. Decidedly, this year the Monte Carlo's reconnecting with its past. The departure in Milan, which has not seen a modern rally since 1932, is a first for the historic event on the occasion of the 115th anniversary of the Automobile Club of Milan. It's also in front of the club headquarters that the official departure of the cruise takes place on a journey of 840 kilometers. This before a passage on the podium erected near the square of Il Duomo, before an enthusiastic crowd that have braved the rain to accompany the competitors on the first meters of their journey. Another cathedral dominates the French starting point, the one in Reims, where the kings of France were crowned. Remains a must for those who've chosen to start from the Champagne region. 940 kilometers await the 91 cars that start from the Marne, before an audience once again out in force to admire the multicolored parade of still impeccable machines. With a power inversely proportional to their popularity, the Citroëns are very popular. The Diane and its 34 horses will be seen along the road to Monaco, which will not be the case of the only Ami 6 running this year, which will have to retire early in the running. A beautiful triple header of Vespa 400 set off in a swarm from the Champagne capital. 3 French-colored microcars, blue, white and red. But this armada will not be invincible and will also lose some of its crews, which doesn't take anything away from their merit. Not so good if you're claustrophobic. At the other end of Europe, Barcelona presents itself under more lenient skies for the launch of 20 cars that have registered at the start there. From Spain, they have to cross the Pyrenees to reach the rallying point of the more than 300 competitors who participate in the Monte Carlo Historic Rally this year. But before that, the pleasure of crossing a hedge of honour formed by the spectators who just can't resist the call of the classic machine. Finally, Monte Carlo, the shortest link to the start of the first sporting confrontation. 729 kilometres, still a long night and a good part of the next day to take turns at the wheel. All this with weather that doesn't at all resemble the douceur de vivre normally displayed around the Principality. Some former winners of the regularity event. Experienced and novice Monegasque crews. The winner of the Monte Carlo in 1988, Bruno Sabi, who decidedly is into the game. And a large Japanese contingent gathered under the banner of Team Japan, crews, vehicles, but also assistance from the Rising Sun, including a prestigious school of technicians and engineers from Tokyo. The establishment has simply decided to attack the event as a kind of practical workshop for the cream of its students. 6 different brand vehicles are running, including a Triumph Spitfire that they restored themselves. And their flag holder will be the former winner of the Dakar running in a Mitsubishi Colt, Kenjiro Shinozuka. Even the pouring rain will not be able to cool their enthusiasm. The point of convergence of all these ambitions, of these hopes and dreams, it's the village of Buis-les-Baronnies in the south of the Drôme, where La Place des Platanes begins little by little to fill of rumours of the rally, and an audience come to enjoy it all despite dark skies. After several hundred kilometres, the first crews finally arrive. This is the point of convergence for all the starting cities, but also the starting point of the first confrontations, with the 2 regularity specials that will open the debates. We're lucky to see a return to the former special stages of the Monte Carlo Rally that offer the possibility to all the competitors to sweep along these magnificent routes. So we're very happy.
De balayer ces routes magnifiques, donc on est très très heureux.
As we leave Stéphane Malam's hometown, it's an entirely new kind of poetry that will unfold in order to survive until the end of this day. 2 regularity zones remain to be run. The first arrivals left Milan, and they're the ones who will play the role of openers until the end of this stage. And obviously, the conditions are not going to make it easier for them. Confronting the elements in the promiscuity of a Steyr-Puch cockpit probably allows one to be a little less cold. But for models like the Triumph TR3, or better yet, the oldest of the plateau this year, this TR2 of 1954, the cold and snow are rather ominous, especially since the slopes of the area, and the vagaries of time, cause an alteration of conditions that add a big question mark to these early hours. The proof, while it's snowing on the Col du Perty at the beginning of the first RZ between Montauban-sur-Lovèze and Saint-André-des-Rosans, the last kilometres are run in the rain, and we'll see these circumstances will have a significant influence on the hierarchy of this opening session. In the meantime, we can also enjoy the succession of styles, shapes and colours in the hairpins that lead the crews to the finish. And in this first parade, it's a Volvo P1800S that gets itself noticed. Its original line attracts the eye, and it's a model tailor-made for classic regularity. This car dates from 1964 and it's the only one running in the rally this year. It's the car from The Saint, the TV series. It's mythical. We see very few, and there were very few made. This is a solid car. It broke the record for the number of kilometers run without any problems. An American drove 3 million kilometers with one. Conclusion is that it has little to be changed. The engine's in cast iron, a big engine. Peripheral parts have been changed, but the engine's never been redone. After the crews from Milan, who are already in the zones, it's the Athens crews that arrive at the entrance to Brie-les-Baronnies. This year, leaving the Greek capital, the team of chefs, which brings together some renowned chefs, is one of the most faithful formations in the event. For one of the chefs, Michel Chabran, this is his 17th participation in the Monte Carlo Historic, and he remains spellbound following his concentration stage from the Acropolis. Starting from Athens was mythical for me. It's been 44 years, but I couldn't remember when they'd started from Athens. It was fabulous seeing the Acropolis and the Parthenon. We were very lucky. These people really want to show off their nation. They were so happy when they saw us. They looked after us very well. It was very nice. And it's also part of the rally's charms. Undoubtedly less pleasant, the regularity special between La Motte-Chalancon and Saint-Nazaire-le-Désert confirms the trend that the terrain is very tricky, dotted with traps on shaded corners, sprinkled with snow in places, whose consistency turns little by little to slush. Respecting the average speed on these winding roads and in these conditions is a real driving exercise that sometimes puts paid to the prognostics. In the space of a few minutes, you can pass from a wet road to an ice rink, depending on the whims of the skies, but also depending on the order of passage in the difficult zones. Sporting the number one on the occasion of this 20th participation, Jean-Pierre Coppola remains one of the most experienced drivers of the pack, and he doesn't hide his pleasure. The ACM has spoiled me. It's a real pleasure for my 20th Monte Carlo Historic. It's a nice reward and I thank them. An Alpine has to slide. It allows us to share with the fans who like to see a berlinette go past just like at the time. We don't have the same tyres, but we have some fun. And we come from afar to enjoy the image of these Japanese crews in a Toyota Celica and a Datsun 240Z, braving all the difficulties and the thousands of kilometers that separate Tokyo from Reims, their city of departure, to come and rub shoulders with the legends of Monte Carlo. Further proof, if necessary, that the fame of the rally goes far beyond the borders of Europe. Exotic in another register, the presence of some models so close and so far away at the same time. A Russian delegation from the mythical Volga, from the Soviet chains of the Gaz brand, back on the trail of the Monte Carlo. Almost forgotten and at the same time so present, the Diane, presence that one could judge incongruous in the context of a race, and yet this model did indeed participate in the Monte Carlo rally. Just like the amusing Vespa 400s, of which there are only 2 examples left in the race, and which are undoubtedly the smallest cars running in the event. A piece of unknown history finally, with the Alfa Romeo Dauphine, produced for 7 years under license in Italy. It remains one of the earliest symbols of the birth of the European Economic Community at the end of the 1950s, thanks to the collaboration of French and Italian national authorities. In these first 2 regularity zones, the 320-odd competitors running this year follow each other in the order of their starting cities. We saw Milan, then Athens, Reims, Bad Homburg, Barcelona, and Monaco will close the running until dusk. Between dog and wolf, 2 crews from Monaco quietly slip into the lead of the rally. The Poles, father and son, Ladislav and Andrzej Postawka, are, on this first evening, second in command of a special Zastava 101 from 1979, a crew that finished on the podium last year. The leaders of the first hour are Michel Badoza and Mogens Redel, who are participating together for the 3rd time in the Monte Carlo Historic, placing their Renault 8 in the lead before the arrival in Valence. Moreover, this year, the rallying point in the city will be the Georges Pompidou Stadium, not the Champ de Mars as tradition has it. Faced with the threat of demonstrations in the town centre, a decision was taken to migrate to the north of the city. A prowess for the municipal services reassembled the village and all the facilities of the Parc Fermé in record time. This ensured the success of the event and did not prevent the public, always fervent and assiduous in Valence, from coming and revelling in the atmosphere of the park at the end of this concentration stage. This first part of the rally has been exhausting for teams and mechanics who will be able to enjoy a night's rest before embarking on the classification stage the next morning. This Sunday, the programme is loaded. 4 regularity zones are on the menu, and not least among them the mythical Beurzay and Saint-Bonnet-le-Froid. But to begin, it's a passage by Entraigues, which will place the morning with nearly 60 kilometres of difficult going. Where the winds of the Ardèche Plateau, known as the Beurle, shake and rattle the chestnut forests. This morning, the competitors, who had to adopt a unified average during the concentration stage, had the choice to commit to one of the 3 types of average: high, intermediate or low, to be respected right up till the finish line. Disputed on dry roads, this special highlights the Porsche 911 of the Norwegian Petter Granerud, who's the most effective among those running on high average. His reward, like that of all competitors, will be a brief stop at La Remise, the obligatory stop of any rally fan, which began in the 60s with the distribution of apple pies and a glass of Valse water, and which since then respects this family tradition, which has evolved throughout the editions. What's changed is that now the drivers come inside to see this little living rally museum I made, history told through photos and articles. For them, when we did the big rally, stopping at La Remise for a convivial moment, eating some tarte, they say to themselves, I'm like Pierrot, Darniche or Mouton or Bruno Sabi. They're happy, so this is an important stopover. All the more important as it allows, in addition, to keep abreast of the latest news of the rally. The crews prepare to face the next regularity zone between Beurzay and La Champ-Raphael. But this morning the news is not so good. The weather, as happens sometimes in this area, is inclement. The Beurle is omnipresent, and at altitude it turns into a snowstorm, making the roads impracticable even for the intervention vehicles. The snowdrifts form very quickly, visibility almost nil, security is severely compromised. We checked on things yesterday to see what the tendency was, and it wasn't good. It was for more wind, more snow, and there it's impossible to clear the snow from the Le Beurzay Plateau. And it's the same thing for Saint-Bonnet-le-Froid. The mayor of Saint-Bonnet-le-Froid told me the conditions were exceptional, so we're sadly going to resign ourselves to not sending the competitors to the Beurzay, which is an event that already has a long history of blockages. So we'll already head over to Mézillac, at the limit of the Ardèche Plateau, and then back down to Saint-Agrève, but it won't be easy. Yes, it's the case to say after the passage at La Remise, the marketplace of Saint-Agrève becomes a refuge for those who've been able to climb up to that point. Polar temperatures, heavy snow. Everyone was hoping for these kinds of conditions, ideal for a Monte Carlo, but the elements have gone one step further, and it becomes an indisputable question of security. For this reason, a third and final regularity zone will be cancelled and replaced by a link to direct the rally caravan to the Tournon-sur-Rhône checkpoint, where the usual communion with the public takes place despite the circumstances, before joining the Parc Fermé of Valence, where the competitors still find a crowd of enthusiasts also omnipresent along the roadside. Tonight is the end of the ranking stage, and the crews are given a starting order to run the common stage that starts the next morning. High average, then intermediate, and low start on the road in the order of their starting numbers affixed to the windshields. Second last year aboard their Golf GTI, the Greeks Delaportas and Moustakas will be among the first to start. Good news for them.
Ça nous plaît quand même, c'est un jeu.
We like it anyway, it's a game. There's an advantage that we don't really risk having other cars in front of us.
On risque pas trop avoir des problèmes devant nous, d'autres voitures, et voilà.
In the position of opener, the occupants of this Lancia Beta Monte Carlo, who are not so enthusiastic about the idea of heading out first, especially as the road conditions remain perilous. We were looking forward to the snow and finally it arrived, but it was no fun. I think it's also forecast for tomorrow, so we'll be able to use our studded tyres. Leaving first is probably not the ideal thing. You have to have your eyes wide open, even if you start at 6 a.m.
Non va bene. Staremo con gli occhi aperti anche se saranno le 6 del mattino.
For the crews and for the public who from daybreak head out to watch the specials, it's a dream Monte Carlo, the 7th regularity zone between the Col de Gangouly and La Cime de Mas, passing by the Col de la Charassons and the Col de Carry. We've rarely seen such conditions in recent years, and there, even to maintain an average significantly less than 50 kilometers an hour, the driving exercise is complex. The Italian Giorgio Schoen at the wheel of his Lancia Monte Carlo had reasons to be wary this day. Starting in the lead, we find him off the road a few minutes later in mid-special, planted in a wall of snow more than a metre high. Among the seasoned crews who tackle this difficult stage, there are the Frenchmen Raymond Durand and Sébastien Scholl in a 1977 Opel Kadett GTE. And slipping into the cockpit of the German car, one quickly understands the difficulty of the exercise.
Allez, 19, 20 d'avance. 38 d'avance, prends-en pas plus, c'est pas la peine. Quand on aura gazé ici, ça peut-être se suffisait. Et l'épingle aux gens. Allez, 50 d'avance avant l'épingle, 59, 60 d'avance avant l'épingle, 57. Et on va retomber à 30, 20 d'avance, 16 d'avance, bon, tu regardes, 8 d'avance, 4, 2 d'avance, 0, 3 de retard, 3, 2 de retard, 2 de retard, là tu te recales, 1 de retard, 0, 0.
Managing the respect of the imposed average requires a permanent mobilization of the crew.
Concentré, on l'est forcément, mais en connaissant la route depuis le temps.
Of course we're concentrated, but knowing the roads in all the times we've driven on them, we can lift our eyes and look at what we're doing, wave to the spectators and give them some pleasure. We had the snow with its advantages and disadvantages, but the roads are chosen for there to be a spectacle, and there is.
C'est des routes qui sont choisies pour qu'il y ait du spectacle, et spectacle qu'il devait y en avoir.
The next stage between the Col de l'Arzelier and Saint-Michel-les-Portes, 29 kilometers long, is also disputed on snowy roads, so the Festival of Slides is therefore far from finished, although obviously the situation evolves over time. Find here the Spanish driver Antonio Sainz. For his 22nd edition, he's chosen this Porsche 912 to drive in his own tracks and that of his brother, winner in Monte Carlo 3 times and 2 times World Rally Champion. The legendary American driver John Buffum is also chosen to return to the scene of his first participation in 1969 with the same model, a Porsche 911T. He's no less than 11 times USA Rally Champion and has more than 100 wins. Unfortunately, he'll have to give up before the return to Monaco. Since the beginning of this day, the thickness of snow and ice is diminishing, but this doesn't mean that the progression of the cruise becomes easier. The Lancia Fulvia of Marco Oliva and Maurizio Gandolfo is proof of the fact. The crew tackles this changing and inconsistent surface perfectly, where in just a few meters, the levels of grip can change totally. But in front of them, other competitors in trouble create a traffic jam. It's also one of the parameters to be managed on these events that take place on the open road. Besides the small hassles encountered on the course, it's necessary to get to the obvious. It's a beautiful day that begins for participants of this 22nd Monte Carlo historic rally. The scenery is idyllic and conditions are perfect on a beautiful snow carpet under a shining sun, as seen from on board the Skoda 130 RS of the Czechs Marel Mash and Jan Blaha. It's now the cars running on intermediate and low average that attack the first difficulties of the day, and as the sun rises in the sky, the difficulties melt away. As previous conditions have proven, we can still expect some surprises from some of the higher numbers, among which are some of the most venerable cars. Last on the road, they can very well confirm themselves among the first in the general ranking, and this is the case for the leaders from the day before, who are not placed in danger at this moment. The top hierarchy and the lead held by the R8 of Michel Badozat is only confirmed as the hours pass by. With the car on the road every minute and more than 300 competitors still in the race, this translates into almost 5 hours of uninterrupted parade on the roads of the Vercors. A wonderful polymorphic procession, even polyphonic, according to the numbers of cylinders, their layout and their capacity. While the last group was in full confrontation with Les Chaossons and the Carry, the first third of the plateau is forced to cancel the Sicilian Special, cancelled because of high risk of avalanche, and thus they move on directly to the 10th regularity zone, which takes place on the 24 kilometers separating the Memorial of Vassieux-en-Vercors from the village of Bouvante-le-Bas. An area, let's say, more civilized, cleaner and also much less sinuous than the previous two, and therefore less conducive to the dramas and differences in performance between the potential leaders. It's an opportunity to focus on the veteran crew of this 22nd edition, aboard this 1972 Citroën SM. Two great figures of the rally world, Bob Néret and Claude Laurent, officially compete for their last Monte Carlo. Between them, they total nearly a century of experience in the most prestigious road events. The opportunity also to follow the evolution of the Ladies' Cup, where the 1300 Beetle of Norwegians Thorhild and Tine Halre is in the lead. Its crew has done wonders on the snowy roads of these first 2 days, and they're quite far ahead of their main competitors. Time check in the early afternoon in Saint-Jean-Royan before travelling to the Parc Fermé and Valence. This temple of the Monte Carlo is an opportunity to find the top-level crews of the high average, some of whom, although well-placed in general, are struggling to beat the leaders of the first hour. Among the unlucky ones this morning, Bruno Sabi keeps a smile. Coming to the rally and meeting with all our supporters, the fans, those nostalgic of the Monte Carlo of the old days, we're back in regions where we lived some great moments, so we experience something exceptional, even if it doesn't go the way we want. Winner of the historic in 2017, the Belgian Michel Decremer also experienced a difficult start to the event. He's been working on a comeback and has made it back into the top 10. It was fantastic here in the snow, all 3 specials. The second we got 4th time for the high average. We had a lot of fun sliding. It was like being in Sweden for a World Rally Championship event. Magnificent. We were second the first day when we had a snowstorm that really favored those who started from Milan and Athens. So it's not the same for everyone. Then we got ahead like a lot of people on the first day, and the second day the problem was solved. So the cumulative effect of these factors put us in second place the first day, and now we're climbing back.
Donc l'effet cumulé de ces deux facteurs
nous a remis à la 32e place le premier jour et maintenant on remonte.
Victorious in 2015 in a Golf, the Italian Piero Lorenzo Zanchi at the wheel of a 1969 Lancia Fulvia is also rather well placed at the end of this stage among the leaders of the high averages.
Il rally molto difficile quest'anno perché
The rally's particularly difficult this year because there's a lot of snow, but also an alternation of snow and asphalt that makes the tyre choices even more important. The qualities of this car are undeniable. Everything's at the front, the engine and the traction, which gives it a lot of efficiency. And as the rear's very light, it follows controls of the driver without any problems. So when the grip's low, the behavior of the car becomes close to that of a rear-wheel drive, or even that of a four-wheel drive. It looks like everything except a classic front-wheel drive. It's very easy to drive.
che è una classica anteriore e ti lascia guidare in maniera molto facile.
The most efficient of the crews of this high average for this moment is that of the Porsche 911 SC of 1978, Ghislaine and Guillaume Gaubert, another family story that combines the passion of rallying.
Nous, on se régale, on prend beaucoup de plaisir.
We're having a lot of fun. The rally has wide roads, which are good for this car, because when it's narrow like this morning, it's hard. But when it's wider, it's a lot better. So good power, good car. We do some good big slides. Sometimes it's just the violin that's missing.
De glisser. J'ai dit, il manque plus que les violons par moment.
Yes, except that it's another music when it comes to restarting. The Porsche is capricious and forces its occupants to push it back to the checkpoint. She'll eventually get going to transport her crew to Valence. Nothing very serious, it's true. At the worst, some anecdotes to tell, with a smile despite everything still omnipresent on their faces, for Bruno Sabi running with a group of friends and for good cause. More than the end result, it's the experience that counts. And in this respect, the R8 Gordini offers a new one.
C'est ça l'intérêt de cette justement.
That's the interest of this discipline, the historic. We can drive with cars we'd never driven before, and the Renault Gordini is one of them. I'm happy to do this with this car in this edition because it's true that you realize those who made some exploits with this car have a lot of merit.
Que ceux qui ont fait des exploits avec cette voiture aient bien du mérite.
There's a lot of nostalgia, and it's mainly for my Association for Cancer Research with this car that we're doing this edition, with a car that belonged to one of my mechanics who we lost a year ago. So it's a group of friends who are doing this in his memory, and we're here whatever happens.
Tout ça, eh bien, on continue quoi qu'il arrive.
All the spirit of rallying summarized in a few words. While the first crews arrive at the entrance to the Parc Fermé of Valence, nothing is still sealed in the different classifications of the event. We're now preparing to go down to Monaco the next morning. There are still some big sections to run before concluding this 22nd edition of the Monte Carlo Historic Rally, even if already few have been spared by fortune along the way, from the most seasoned to the freshest beginners, even both at the same time. Things were going okay, but this morning we had the perfect illustration that all can be going well, then suddenly it goes badly. We had a problem with snow tires. We didn't have enough lift, so we had to run classic tires, and so we took 2,500 points, because we had no traction at all. We accumulated up to 30 seconds delay, and we never succeeded right up to the runoff on the little road to Les Charassons to make up the time. But that's the game. We went from a nice 20th or 21st place to 61st or something like that now. We're going to work on climbing back up, which will be good experience for next year, as we'll try to come back. The rally's still far from finished, as we're already thinking about the next edition. This is the case also for the crew of this 1961 Triumph TR4. Bernard Northmore and David Stanley lead the ranking of British crews after having occupied an excellent 21st place the day before, while acknowledging some difficulties on the snow of this morning.
We've had one or two problems with the car, a bit of losing oil, over-rich, but other than that, it's been going okay. I've been doing it previously in a Healy 3000, which is a lot heavier. This is lighter, so it's actually not too bad. It's quite easy to control. The Charassons was snowy. We lost quite a bit of points there, but other than that, it was okay. The other stages have been okay.
The front runners are already resting, the tail enders still in search of the ideal average, the game of the starting order, the choice of average speeds to be observed, and the occasional road incidents. The leading trio has evolved slightly in this respect before the last evening of rallying, but the intermediate averages are keeping the monopoly. The Fiat Ritmo of the Italians Alessio De Angelis and Sergio Sisti is in third place at the end of the 10th run with 420 points. Behind the Lancia Fulvia of their compatriots Massimo Canella and Nicolas Arena, 310 points from the leaders. Still in the lead, the Franco-Danish crew of Michel Badoza and Mogens Riedel, who are decidedly the authors of an exemplary course. It just remains for all to go back little by little to the drone capital, from which they'll leave the next morning to head to the Principality of Monaco. Little by little, the light and temperature drop on the landscape of the Vercors. And while the return to Valence seems to be a snack, it's nothing of the kind. The crew of the Datsun number 23 is here to prove it. Koichi Nagase and Tsutomu Hayashi will have a big fright and a long wait for the tow truck in the cold.
Are you okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how the rally ends for the Japanese pair. On the morning of the last day, 3 events will be played out before arriving at the Parc Fermé in Monaco. The first, between Saint-Nazaire-le-Désert and Gumian, totals a little less than 30 kilometers. And again, the road's tricky, especially for those who start early in the morning like the crew from Monaco, Nicolas Milanesio and Mathieu Badier, in a Golf GTI. This is their first experience at the Monte Carlo Historic. They chose to wear the colors of the foundation Cédric and Christophe Flaujac. One has to be wary of the remnants of snow that litter the course, and also watch the reflections of the road in the shady areas, where the frost might have prepared some surprises during the night. The following regularity zone is also part of the classics. Verclos-La Borelle, 27 kilometers, clearer and simpler to tackle, allowing the drivers to free themselves a little from the pressure imposed in recent days by the multiple risks of error imposed by the state of the roads. One of the stars of this edition is the Japanese driver Kenjiro Shinozuka. The former winner of the Dakar was already there in 2018, and in a rather surprising way, in the educational setting of a practical workshop for top-flight engineers.
Our team is Tokyo University. So Tokyo University is a top university in Japan. So they are very, very clever man, everybody. They only study. So they don't have enough experience for everything. For rallies, if they do the rally, they have a lot of experience for many things. We have 4 kind of car. So this is very difficult for them because we don't have enough spare parts. And they don't know how to fix the car. This is not a hobby for them. This is a curriculum for the student. I think this is a good experience for them.
The Germans Barbara Ziegler and Franziska Meyer were leading in the Ladies' Cup before passing the baton to the Norwegians Tina and Torhild Halre, whose Beetles seemed impossible to compete with, even for the title holders. But machines and luck can reverse all certainties in rallies. And tonight, that's the case. The Nordic ladies have to give up a victory that seemed to have been promised to them. The navigator came to announce the news to Steffi Edelhoff and Birgit Binder.
We were driving only on 3 spark plugs.
Okay.
And we had very little effect. So you can see our results today. You know, the roads were The roads were easy, you know, good
Yeah,
regularities,
yes, very.
but we still got loads of penalty points because we had no effect, no
Yeah.
power in the car.
Oh God.
I'm so sorry for that. We stopped to check in our service team. They figured out that nope, you should not drive any further because if we drive more, then the entire engine will break down. So that was it for us.
Oh no.
I'm so sorry for that. I'm going to sleep now.
So this is our female crew, already 7 times winners of the Ladies' Cup, on their way to a new success. While the rally may be an excellent improvisation class and D system for technicians, it remains above all and for all a great school of modesty and self-sacrifice. Start and finish in Entrevaux for the 13th regularity special. A loop goes up and down, passing through the Col des Félines, disputed under the dazzling sun of the French Riviera. After 4 days of white deluge, the change is much appreciated. 15 kilometers on mostly dry roads that warm the hearts of those on high averages. Ghislain and Guillaume Gobert, who managed to maintain their Porsche 911 SC, up with the leaders. The Poles, Miller and Orzechowski, in a Fiat X19 in second position. Former winners Zaki and Agnesi, third in this Lancia Fulvia. And the Norwegians, Granerud and Lié, who were in fourth place in the category. There you have the ranking of the fastest cars as we head this time directly to the Parc Fermé in Monaco. Joining the Principality remains the principal objective of the majority of competitors, because it already means that machines and humans have managed to hold up until then. Still awaiting the crews, the long and famous last evening. After a few hours to rest, 2 regularity zones remain to be performed at night. 143 kilometers, including 55 under the stopwatch on roads that have often been the scene of revolutions in the final ranking. But before thinking of the sequel, let's take advantage of the present moment and of this prestigious podium, of this Parc Fermé, where the entire rally is found around the cars. Spectators are welcome to admire the strongmen of this edition, Mogens Riedel and Michel Badoza, spurred on by the Italians. Alessio De Angelis and Sergio Sisti visibly glad to have arrived after a good progression in the ranking. Massimo Canella and Nicola Arena waiting in ambush before leaving for the final confrontation. It'll certainly be difficult for me because this is the first time I've participated in this event. So far I had a lot of fun, and thanks to my loyal Nicola, we managed to get here in a very good position. Warmly welcome during the first few days in the villages and city stages, it's tonight the Automobile Club of Monaco, which in turn plays host to over 600 competitors that remain in the race. Buffet, music, rally stories are on the menu for an evening dedicated to sharing and conviviality. A vigil of arms, in fact, before resuming the path to a peaceful and humanistic front for the heart of the night of Turini. Under the orders of the president of Monaco's SBM, an unconditional partner of Monaco events, it's 30 seconds by 30 seconds that the cars pass by the starting podium. High average first, then intermediate and finally low average. One thing's already certain, we'll have to wait till the early morning to know the names of the winners of this 2019 vintage. For the 14th regularity section, there are 35 kilometers to be traveled between the Col de Braus and La Bolène-Vesubie. Piracalva and the Col de Turini will be the highlights. Then Lantosque-Lucéram for 20 kilometers passing by the Col de Porte and the need to remain alert until the very end of this ultimate special to avoid falling prey to one of the many traps. Almost 2 hours after the first cars, it's the leaders of the general ranking who set off. We're expecting a final three-way battle between the Italians, still lying in ambush at less than 650 points, and the occupants of this Renault 8 that's been making life hard for everyone over the past 5 days.
Je crains pas spécialement un truc, sauf le Turini parce que je connais.
I'm not especially worried about anything except the Turini because I know it. There's very little margin for trajectory errors. It's a little bit like the Monte Carlo Grand Prix. You go wide and straight away you hit the side and you're out of the running. There's a lot of parameters. So it will be essential to remain incisive while being reasonable, a kind of schizophrenia that is the whole difficulty of this finale. The dry conditions do not mean that everything's easy. It's quite the opposite. On the sunny side, what melts during the day can turn to ice, and on the other side, the remnants of snow are not particularly benevolent at these late hours. With their Lancia Stratos, the 2016 winners Daniel Perfetti and Ronnie Kessel hit the Turini. The Greeks, Della Portas and Moutakis, win the ultimate special in Lucerne. It's in a way the revenge of the high averages. The Golf GTI number 9 was driven for the first time in Monte Carlo by Olivier Campana, navigated by his wife Lydia. They remain as the best Monegasque crew in this edition. 8th win in the Ladies' Cup for Steffi Edelhoff and Birgit Binder. In the general ranking now, 7th place goes to Raymond Durand and Sebastian Scholl. Peter Granerud and Marianne Lier finished 6th. Gislain and Guillaume Gaubert are 5th in the final. A Jaguar XK150 running on low averages and driven in masterly fashion by Karolis Reisis and Elias Akmans takes 4th place. All that remains is to define the order on the podium, and it will be the circumstances that in part dictate their law. Starting in 2nd position from Monaco, Massimo Canella encounters some difficulties that materialize with the presence of a slower car in front of him. Gert Fund and his big Mercedes are finding it hard on this winding and narrow mountain road, and it's very difficult for them to leave a passage without putting themselves in danger. The generous forms of the German do not help, and the Lancia Fulvia remains stuck for long minutes behind its predecessor. In the descent to La Bolène, he ends up being able to pass, but the damage is done. The Fiat Ritmo, which was in his wake on scratch, takes the advantage and settles into a final 2nd position. In the 14th RZ, the road was partly snowy and icy, which allowed me to come back on him. It's a satisfaction to take such a small Ritmo to such a beautiful result. Atypical until the end, this edition of the Monte Carlo Historic therefore crowns a crew who took the reins of the race from the first meters without ever leaving first place from start to finish. Mogens Riedel and Michel Badozat, who did not yet believe in the final podium.
J'ai du mal à réaliser.
It's hard to realize for me already participating 5 years ago was something. Everything went well, everything ran well, the car, the equipment, the navigator, and I didn't make any mistakes. All that put together and it was okay. A few years ago when I was looking at the podium, I said, one day there will be an R8 up there. Many laughed, but they're not laughing anymore. Well, yes, they're laughing because they're my friends, and they must take me for a madman. A very normal madman among the others, for it's necessary to have a small grain of madness to embark upon such an adventure, especially in the conditions that were imposed on the competitors along the route of this 22nd regularity rally, historic in many ways. In the glitz of the Salle des Etoiles of the Monte Carlo Sporting Club, where the awards ceremony traditionally takes place, many felt they'd experienced an exceptional event. Each one would bring his or her touch or personal anecdote, the experience of a moment of grace or misery, but all will remember being there, to have participated in the myth, to have added their little stone to a legend that is built year after year. Traditional and yet permanently changing, the Monte Carlo Historic Rally will return in 12 months for its 23rd edition.